at the benefit package split or cost sharing package for council, staff did reach out to our provider and also through the MN's listserv, and there was a range from 75% MU, which is municipal unit, to 25% council, mayor, CM, to 50-50. Some units have the same split as their employees and some do not. So there really wasn't any overriding general consensus of what is done. So that will be something that council will need to decide. Staff were also asked to provide some tax rate history for Region of Queens. So I've included a number of slides here in your PowerPoint package. So this is the slide for historical rates back to 25-26. There's a lot of information on it. So it is obviously for your information. You can see there's no drastic increases or decreases over the number of years, but there is a steady upward climb. So I looked at, let's take the last 10 years and just put them in a table for you so that you could reference those. But what really would be important to me if I was a counselor was where were the changes? And so that's why I put this slide in here. So these are the historic changes in tax rate. So if we look back to, like at the bottom of the graph, to 2006, 2007, there was a 7-cent increase that year in the commercial tax. 2007, 2008, there was a 6% increase in the commercial tax and a 3-cent decrease in the residential tax. And that's how you read that slide. So for a number of years there were significant increases in the commercial tax. I wasn't here during that time. I was aware that at some point the business occupancy tax was reduced by the province, and I think maybe the consensus may have been from the council at the time to kind of offset that, so businesses didn't see any savings, but council didn't see any big reduction in revenue either. But as I said, I wasn't here, so that's kind of an anecdotal, perhaps, explanation. So I included the table off to the far right, just so you had like an actual table of the increases and decreases, and they're, like I said, they're graphed to the left. Now, the last time that we had a difference in change between, because typically now, since I've been here and for the number of years before, we've already taken that base rate and we've increased the base rate for residential, commercial, and resource the same. But in the past, they did not, as you can see by this graph. So as of 17-18, where there was no increases, anything from then on was the same. So you can see the 2-cent increase in 2018-19, 2-cent increase for each in 2019 and 20. Then we had the 4-cent increase in 21-22, and then the 3-cent decrease in 22-23. And since then, there's been no change. So is that the kind of information that council would like to have? Okay, good. If I missed anything, let me know.
No, if I could just ask, so I see that we have Liverpool and Queens, and so is that like as the town versus the municipality, like in many that there's a value for each of those, and so is that because there's an area rate within District 13, the tax District 13?
Are you talking about this
yeah,
graphic here?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so the previous graphic was just base rate. It was just Region of Queens and it was just base rate. But the following graphics include area rates. So when we go on to people's websites, so when you see an M, it means that's a municipality. And if you don't see an M, it's a town. And so we compare apples to apples. And so we're a regional municipality. So we have both a town and a municipality. So we split them. And so you then kind of compare apples to apples. So what I've done is I've sorted these lists using the residential rate from lowest to highest. And so the commercial rates don't jive that way, but I just kept we focused on the residential rate first. So for 25-26, you can see Queens is number 3. We have the 3rd lowest in the units that are listed there that we used as comparators. These are the ones that we, as finance, we collect. We don't collect any outside of this. If you want us to go and do a province-wide search, we can, but this is what we've been doing, and we've only been doing it since 2022. So I graphed what was on the previous slide into a bar graph for your reading pleasure. And again, at the top I say includes area rates. And so we have a hard time determining area rates without deeply drilling down on these websites. So when we're asked about these rates, that's why we weren't able to give you just the base rates right off the bat. If that's something that council wants us to get staff to keep doing, we'll keep digging at it to get you that information. So I went back and I did this for 25, 24, 23, and 22. And really, Queens is basically in the same place as we go through. We don't move.
Respective to the character municipality.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions about those tax rates? Again, those tax rates include area rates. So in some cases, you may have, Town of Bridgewater may have a lower base rate, but then they may have significantly more area rates. But at the end of the day, that's the amount that goes on the bill, is the total amount, which is inclusive of area rates, and that's the one you're seeing in those graphs.
Thanks. I appreciate this analysis. When we look at the town of Liverpool and the commercial rate, and so are there different area rates for commercial for commercial properties, or are those the same area rates that we're accustomed seeing for the residential ratepayers as well, the sidewalk and paving for in town?
It's my understanding that an area rate applies to all three tax groups. So there's the three: the commercial, the residential, and the resource. And if you have an area rate in a particular bucket of assessment numbers or districts, that applies to all tax types in that category.
Right, so if I look at the difference in the commercial rate between Queens as a municipality and Liverpool as a town, it's those area rates that are driving that difference. Thank you. Any questions on this analysis, or anything that any direction at this point, council? Go ahead.
Sorry. I thanks Director Vino. I really appreciate this. I think this is also helpful for residents too, because, you know, we often hear about like MODL's tax rates, but they are a very, very large rural municipality, and they don't have any of the infrastructure of the town because it's separate with the town of Bridgewater. So I think that this is helpful for not only council members, but also for residents. And I think it also shows us in looking at commercial rates for our town versus others, how we stand up. So I just really appreciate this, and I know it was a lot to pull it together, but thank you.
And so specific to MODL, Lunenburg-M, that is the municipality district of Lunenburg that in that chart?
And I would just add to that, because I live in Modal, so I get a Modal tax bill. So part of our tax bill is an area rate for our fire department. And that will be different depending on where you live. So I'm not sure if that rate, it just takes that particular area rate out because it's so different across the municipality. So that may exclude the fire rate for that particular exercise because it's different.
Yeah, so like specific to MODL, they have area rates associated with the fire district that they're situated within. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Any other questions or clarifications on this analysis, council? I just wanted to go back, Director Vino, just to the reconciliation report, and pardon me, I didn't get in there in a timely way. I see that there was a reduction with respect to policing of 74,751. I see there's an increase of 3.4%, not 5%. That's with the existing policing complement that we have, and then prorating the additional officer to 10 months. But I remember, I think at the last meeting, the last budget meeting that we had, that we initially were projecting $225,000 for the initial officer, and then I believe that you had said, but that cost is actually a little bit higher. Is that right?
Correct. So both myself and the deputy CAO were in contact with people from the province regarding the cost of policing. And I budgeted a 5%. The more current information is a 3.4, so there was a savings there. Initially, we budgeted $225,000 for an officer at 2. We've reduced that to 1. The current cost, the most current cost that we received is $236. So we prorated that down to a 10-month year. So you have a change. So we've reduced the amount for the officer even though even though the total cost went up, we
Yeah.
reduced it because we used 10 months instead of 12.
Right.
And then we had a savings with the 5% on the year versus the 3.4.
And that was my question, so that the 10 months prorated is based on the 234, not the 225, or the 236, yeah, okay, thanks very much. Any other questions for Director Vino at this time, council? Okay, I'll pass it back over to you, Director Vino.
So there's really just one more thing that I need to bring you guys up to date on, and that's, we updated our reserve activity report. There really is just the one change in that is staff taking that $250,000 out of the accumulated surplus to get us down to the 3-cent increase.
And is the projected surplus for the present fiscal, that which I guess we're in the last day of, is it still pretty much, as I believe that the figure you shared with us was around, forecasting around 970,000, is that right, in terms of the projected surplus for this current fiscal?
Yeah, I haven't even revisited that. I've just been doing this for the last 6 weeks, so I can't really tell you. We also have, you will also, as council, be able to consider taking $500,000 out of that surplus. I believe we talked about that at one of the meetings in terms of funding those smaller operational capital jobs that we have that in the reserve, and you'll see that allocation also in your reserve activity report.
Sorry, which reserve is that? That 500,000 of the accumulated surplus for this year? Where is that going to the which reserve does that flow to?
52177, it's on page
Operations
11.
Capital Fund? That one?
Operations Capital
Operations
Fund,
Capital
yeah.
Fund, okay.
And so we formed that last year.
Yep.
Because we had a lot of those smaller non-infrastructure capital jobs that
Right.
we wanted to kind of separate, but they needed their own source of funds. And so that's why we came up with that. We transferred money last year from last year's surplus in to fund it, and we will hopefully be able to transfer another 500,000 because I used that fund when we approved the capital investment plan in December to fund those smaller jobs, like the Gorham Street planter. I think we were talking about
Yeah.
that at the last budget meeting.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Any questions for Director Vino on the report? Okay. I will look for a motion that Council of Region of the Queens Municipality receive the report titled Operating Budget Fiscal 2026-27 for information. Moved by Councillor Jenkins. Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Romero. All those in favor? Okay. At this time, I'd like to open up the floor to council if there are any revisions or further direction with respect to the operating budget that you would like to provide to council, or to provide to staff, or to debate with council at this time. Any items that any items in review of the version 5 brought forward this in this one that you want to speak to? Okay. Yeah, Councillor Fancy.
Yes, I didn't know when to bring forward this, so I just wanted to bring it forward in our administration policy number 27. Yes.
I think that would be most appropriate to talk about. We have it as 5.2 under bylaws and policies.
Leave it there?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think so,
thank you.
yeah. No, we're going to make space to talk about operational policy 27 on remuneration for sure. And any direction from council that would impact the operating budget would be captured at that point. But any other feedback on, yeah, Councillor Romero?
Hi, Director Vino. I'm just wondering, did we find out anything about the Christmas wreaths as far as that line? I didn't see anything in the new report, so just concerning.
We did, and I do apologize. I should have put that in the staff report. That's being internally done this year. That's confirmed.
Okay, so just to clarify, I think in the past, at least at least last year, the Christmas wreaths, putting them up, taking them down, that had been subcontracted, is that right? And we're confirming that we have internal staff capacity to accomplish that task this year, is that right? Okay, thanks. Councilor Mayor, go ahead.
I just have another question. Regarding Queen's Place, in the full facility rental, I see in 2025 we had 41,000. There's none in the budget, so do we have any income in that line, or because I know we used to have a spring home show and that's gone. Hank Snow tribute, that didn't happen last year, but I'm just wondering, we also had a Jehovah Witness kind of a weekend type thing, and I'm just wondering if that's happening, because I see absolutely nothing here for revenue.
Yes, to my knowledge, there's nothing that's in there. However, I do know that there were some discussion with our Economic Development Department regarding holding events and using the funding from the marketing levy that we would be getting to generate those type of things. So I don't have anything specific on that, and maybe our deputy CAO could come speak to it, but that's all the information I have at this time.
So it's 6 of 28. The item in question is 6 of 28 related to revenue associated with Queen's Place.
Just to add that, if I may, Your Worship, through you, essentially we wanted to budget small c conservatively when it comes to revenues for QPEC this year, recognizing that this is a transition year. We're in the process of hiring our Community Economic Development Officer, person who's going to be focusing on events. And rather than over-promising hitting a certain revenue level this year, we wanted to kind of take stock of things this year and see what kind of revenue we can generate through events.
Well, I understand the reasoning there, but ice rentals, I mean, is that even $1,000 up higher than it was last year? I don't think it is. I mean, that's not the greatest, but yeah, a little less than $1,000 more this year than last year. What do we charge for ice? And why are we suspecting that it's going to be, no movement on that?
So there's uncertainty with the teams that'll be there each year. So it is our understanding that there is uncertainty with a couple of teams. So we wanted to budget, not assuming they're going to be there, but budget conservatively. Obviously, we're going to work with them if there's anything we can do to help support those teams, but it depends a lot on registration and the levels that they're able to offer in order for them to house and have the teams.
So we're talking minor hockey. So we're not sure of registration of minor hockey. What's the cost for the ice per hour?
Our non-prime rate currently, just one second, Monday to Friday until 4 p.m. is $92 an hour. Our prime rate, which is after 4 p.m. and weekends, is $183, and that's per hour. This is HST included. And our local sport rate, that's for our Queens County Minor Hockey, Queens County Blades, and our local schools, during prime is $167.
Is there a motion or direction with respect to the approach for revenue at Queen's Place Mayor Center, or is it just questions for clarification at this point? Council? No motion or direction forthcoming at this time? No? Okay. Anything else? Any other concerns? Or questions? Or direction on the budget at this point? Deputy Mayor, I'll recognize you now.
Thank you. Question is for Director Vino. When we look at this current draft and it's proposing a deficit of 3 cents, equating to 450,000 and some change there, I'm just wondering what options council would have. Like if council were not wanting to touch the residential rates at this time until we looked at our tax reform through the residential process, like looking at everything as a whole, but would perhaps consider just touching the commercial rates, like how does that equate to this, I guess? Is that an option? So like if the residential rates were to remain the same, would it require 3 cents to bring that up? Would it look different? How does that, I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself well, but for that $450,000, for us to recover that revenue, what would it take if we weren't touching all of those rates?
So the current tax levy is calculated on the assessment values of all the districts for their particular bucket, whether it be residential, commercial, or resource. The commercial bucket is a lot smaller than the residential bucket. So if you're looking to get that $450,000 on the commercial ratepayers, there's going to be a significant amount of increase on the tax rate. The levy is currently formatted, we'll get into this in tax reform, so that when one rate increases, all the base rate increases the same. I can certainly go back and get you that number, but it's not something that I would be able to just put in right now and calculate. But what I do know to be true is that the value of our commercial property is significantly less than the value of all our resource property and all our residential property. So the recoupment of that $450,000 on that tax rate would be I would think, a significant burden to our commercial and business community.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Right, which underscores why we need to drive business growth in the community so we can expand the tax base as it relates to commercial ratepayers. Okay, anything further? Anything further on the operating budget at this time, council? Okay, then at this time, I would like to request Deputy Mayor if I could hand the chair to you so I could speak to an item, please.
Certainly. Go ahead.
Okay. So in review of the careful consideration of the version 5 of the budget, and I very much appreciate the ongoing support of staff to rework this budget and provide us with the type of analysis that we need to make good informed decisions around this. But at present, I am not comfortable with the level of funding that we are allocating to our equipment reserves. And this is coming from a place where we're and I appreciate the fact that staff have been working toward improvement of our asset management of the fleet vehicles and the equipment purchases and our approach to maintaining, managing, divesting assets. But frankly, I just do not have sufficient information where I can confidently say to the taxpayers that we need to draw on the operating budget, to draw on the tax revenue to commit the level of funding that we presently have is proposed within the budget, and I believe those are, and correct me if I'm wrong, but $200,000 to the landfill equipment reserve and $250,000 to the more general equipment reserve, and I don't have the level of I don't have enough information to articulate how much of a reduction I think is appropriate or that I would advocate to see here. But I want to be clear, I'm not advocating that we change our level of service with respect to the way that we perform the operations at the landfill or how we use our public works and infrastructures team to augment and to create our capacity to achieve a level of service and accomplish capital projects using our internal resources. I'm not interested in a discussion about change in level of service. What I'm saying is it's clear to me that there's opportunities for more efficiencies in the way that we're managing and maintaining our equipment. And at this point, I can't justify to the taxpayers why we should be contributing another $450,000 cumulatively between the landfill equipment reserve and the broader equipment reserve, so 72125 and 72130. So I would like to make a motion to direct staff to come back with potential options for council to explore with some significant reduction in one or both of the equipment reserves that are being allocated for the current tax year, until we get to a place where we have a modernized and effective approach to ensure that we are managing those assets and managing that equipment in an optimal, deliberate, efficient way. I'm not comfortable with that right now, our approach to those assets right now, and so I'm not comfortable asking our taxpayers to contribute $450,000 to those reserves at this time. So that's the motion, Deputy Mayor, or Mayor at this point.
That's a very long motion.
I'm sorry.
Do you want to just maybe briefly,
I direct
being
st- I-
considerate
yeah,
of our
yeah,
acting clerk.
Certainly, I'll restate the motion. I direct staff to bring forward options for substantial reduction in one or both of the landfill equipment reserve and equipment reserve for the next review of the operating budget.
Thank you. There's been a motion put on the floor. Is there a seconder? Was that you, Councillor Johnson? Okay, motion has been moved and seconded. Further comments or debate at this time? Would anybody like to speak? I'm assuming you've said what you'd like to say. Would you
Yeah,
like
no,
to add anything
I
else?
no further comment from me. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Any other comments at this time? Is there anyone who would like to speak against that motion? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Back to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just going to ask one more time before we move on to 4.2. Is there anything else with respect to the version 5 of the operational budget discussion that council would like to bring forward to council at this point?
Just something I'd like to flag.
Go ahead.
I think it was noted at our last two previous meetings, council didn't have a conversation about Queens County Transit.
Thank
So
you.
I just wanted to flag that. I'm not sure if anybody's looking to have that conversation or not.
Thank you.
It was, the vehicle acquisition was separated from the ask, but the ask from the previous did change, so I don't think we've actually attended to that item.
Thanks for flagging that, Deputy Mayor. And just so we have it in front of us, the ask during the presentation with respect to the operating funding was, we have that available to us? Was it 70? Was it 65?
It was 85 total, and 20 of it was for the truck or vehicle reserve, and then 65 was operating, which is included in the budget.
And so it's currently funded at $65,000, for the operating budget, okay? And that was funded at $50,000 in the previous tax year, is that right? The previous operating budget last year?
Last year it was 70 because we included the $20,000 for the vehicle
Right,
fund.
50 plus 20 for the vehicles, okay. Yep, I think, yeah, that's right, we had deferred that discussion, so let's put it back to council here. Is there a motion? So currently it's funded at $65,000. Is that the will of council to retain that level of funding as requested by Queens County Transit, or to amend or adjust that level of funding? Anything, council? Councilor Jenkins?
So last year's total funding was 70,000, and this year we want to go to 65, is that correct?
That's correct, because last year had $50,000 for operating and $20,000 to their vehicle reserve. So this year, council directed staff to include the $65,000 for the operating, and you put off or delayed the discussion about the 20, which is, I think, what we're doing right now. Because
Yeah.
currently it's 65.
And I believe the motion to council was to hold off on the discussion around the $20,000 for the vehicle replacement fund until we had more details from the organization with respect to their application to a COA or other funding sources, and more clarity with respect to what vehicles will be required at what time, and their approach to managing the vehicle replacement fund. But is council comfortable with the level of funding at $65,000 as currently contained in the operating budget, or is there a motion otherwise? Or discussion? Go ahead, Councilor Merrill.
I just have a question there, provincial funding. Do we know if that was, I believe it was cut, was that reinstated?
Yeah, I believe that, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding during the presentation was that the funding had been restored to previous levels. Go ahead.
I just pulled up the presentation from, it was a special council meeting on March 17th. So the ask was a continuance of a grant from the Region of Queens in the amount of $65,000 in support of our operating budget. This is an increase of $15,000 from the previous year due to an increase in ridership and operational costs. And then in addition, they had asked for that $20,000 towards a new vehicle, which we had parked that. So I'm just looking here. But that was the ask and that was the explanation. And so I think in a previous meeting, we had been given like the 5 years of history from Queens County Transit. And I think in 2020, if I'm remembering it correctly, it was $25,000 operating grant. The municipality also gave, I think it was close to $26,000 towards a vehicle from some provincial grant funding that we got at the time. And then it was like 27 or 28 the next year, kind of stayed in those. And then it was either 23 or 24, it went up $10,000 to an operating grant of $38,000. And for the last 2 fiscal years, it's been at 50.
And so I'll just ask again, is there any motion or further debate or discussion with respect to the funding allocated to the Queens County Transit?
I'd like to make a motion that we leave the funding at $50,000 for the Queens County Transit in the budget.
And so just to clarify that we adjust the funding in the current operating budget from 65,000 to 50,000.
That's correct.
Second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Wenzel. As the mover, do you want to be first to debate it, Councillor Merrill?
I guess my reasoning is if they have increased ridership, they should have increased revenues. That's just my thought on the idea.
Further debate, discussion? Councillor Jenkins.
Unfortunately, the way their model works is the more ridership they have, the more debt they have. With the cost of the fuel prices and whatnot, unfortunately at this time I cannot support that motion.
Further debate? Deputy Mayor Charlton?
I think originally I think maybe I was considering the 50 and just with some clarity around how, like a better plan forward of how those folks can plan their operational increases and the municipality, because if you look back, obviously they doubled at some point, but I mean, it's still a modest amount that they do get, and then we all know what the prices of gas is right now. But I do think that the group is going to have to look at how they deal with their ridership, and it was articulated that, they're driving to Caledonia and spending 4 hours, particularly like with one person. And so I don't know we can't speak to their model. That's entirely up to them. But I think that their board obviously will be looking at efficiencies. I think at this time, it's an extra $15,000. I'm okay with it the way that it is. But I think obviously there needs to be some more planning in the future. That would just be my view at this time. Thanks.
Further debate? Any further debate, Council? Before I call the question? Okay. All those in favor? And those against? The motion's defeated. We'll maintain the level of $65,000 in the operating budget. Madam Clerk, that motion was defeated unanimously. Okay, thanks, council. Anything else before we move on to 4.2? No? Okay. Thanks for that, Director Vino. I think you're up, though, for 4.2 for spending without an approved budget. Is that right? That's you, right? Take it away.
So council is still deliberating our 26-27 operating budget and has not been approved. The initial draft was introduced at a special council meeting on March the 3rd, and subsequent meetings have reviewed our operating budget with council. So it's common practice among other municipal units to pass these interim spending limits to ensure that municipalities' operations and service delivery continues without interruption. And so that's why we're here today. And the recommendation is for 1/3 of the 25-26, that was last year's operating budget, the amount of 10.3 million, for the purposes of providing spending authority and business continuity to the fiscal year that begins tomorrow.
Got to keep the lights on. Any questions for Director Vino on this one? Something we had to entertain last year as well, as we did not, I mean, it's commonplace that municipalities often don't pass the budget before entering the next budget year. Some municipalities don't even start their budgeting deliberation until April. So some may say we're ahead of the curve. Any questions? Okay. Is there a motion? I can give you the recommended motion. The recommended motion is that the Council of Region of Queens Municipality approve 1/3 of the operational expense budget for 25-26 in the amount of $10,300,000 for the purpose of providing spending authority and business continuity in the fiscal year beginning April 1st, 2026 until an operating budget for 2026-2027 is approved by this council. Moved by Councillor Jenkins, seconded by Councillor Fancy. Any debate or discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Director Vino. Okay, moving on to bylaws and policies, the first of which we're going to look at is Policy 100 about litter collection, our litter collection program. I see that Director Grant is coming up to provide us with an overview of that policy. Take it away as you're ready, Director Grant.
Good morning. So here to present a new policy, Operational Policy 100 regarding litter collection. So a little bit of background, in 2018, the Region of Queens inaugurated the Solid Waste Litter Collection Program, which was recommended at that time by the Ad Hoc Litter Abatement Committee. The idea with the enhancement to, or the program was to enhance community buy-in by providing some financial stimulus to local community nonprofits. So in the previous program, $100 was provided to those community groups who effected a 3-kilometer cleanup, $100 per kilometer to a maximum of 3 kilometers, So over the last few years, as we're aware of, we've had a lot of review with operational policies and work within our organization. So one thing that was identified during the third-party safety audit was the program, the way it was being completed and conducted. And so some attention was drawn. We completed a review, and we are returning now with a policy of how we will plan to continue, or to, I guess, reinstate the execution of that policy. So council has the policy attached to the staff report, which outlines responsibilities, authority, etc. Ultimately, we're looking to align the program with the provincial program for the Adopt a Highway. So when we're asking or encouraging folks to clean up on a provincial highway, we should be following what the provincial government has already instituted as the requirement. What's included or changed from previous versions would be the compensation. So instead of $100 per kilometer, we've increased it, or proposed an increase to $125, to a maximum of, I believe, 5 kilometers per effort. There's a waiver form. It's essentially very alike to what other municipalities are doing, and agrees with what the provincial government is doing. So.
Any questions for Director Grant at this time, Council? Councillor Fancy?
Yes, just a few things. In order for anyone to do the litter cleanup, they have to be part of Adopt a Highway? That's my first question.
No, so the traditional Adopt a Highway, as I understand, has changed a lot over the last few years. So it used to be that you adopt it and essentially, I use the word own, I guess, perhaps a section of roadway, versus now where it's more of an administration program that sees that community groups are affecting cleanup in approved or prescribed areas versus perpetual ownership or responsibility of that area. So it's two separate programs now.
Going back to that same question though, so that if someone were to be wanting to adopt a certain part of the highway, like I know that we have one group what I'm involved with, we have our signage up for Adopt a Highway. But for this, all you have to do is contact Adopt a Highway and then that we bring that back to you to say that they have been contacted and understand that you want to do this?
Yep, so it's outlined in the kind of the guidance of how we will execute the program. So you can reach out to Adopt a Highway on the website, complete their application, you'll get a response back that you're approved by them. All we need is just a carbon copy of that approval, and then we can take care of things on our end for our program.
Yeah, the other thing is when I was looking through what the cleanup, it's going to be, you get the bags, you put them in a prescribed area for the region to pick up. I don't know, I didn't see prescribed areas identified just yet, but the other idea is that a lot of times when you go cleaning, you find things like tires, refrigerator door, anything else like that. Is that going to be put up in the prescribed area too, or is that going to be the responsibility of the people cleaning to get that out of there?
Yeah, so there's additional details in the guidance on that, how to deal with hazardous waste, that kind of stuff. So if folks are dealing with sharps, we'd ask that they avoid handling them. They're not encouraged. They can be reported back to the RCMP, I believe is the process now. Items that are banned from landfill, like tires and that kind of stuff, can be cleaned up. And with each approval, we'll give the group a location where they can dispose the waste of, and then we'll pick it up from there and handle it appropriately.
Any other questions for Director Grant at this time? Councilor Mira, go ahead.
So some residents clean up along their road themselves. I know before we were asked to put on just a note on the bag that it was like roadside cleanup, and the waste people would take it. How do we approach that now? And do we use black bags or clear bags, or because it'll be mixed waste? So.
Yeah, and so what we've done, so if somebody's conducting a cleanup as part of the program, they'll be provided with a special color bag, which will be unique kind of to that effort that they're taking part of, so we know that's identified as being mixed waste, and then it'll be received by us, our staff, and disposed of properly. Folks that are completing efforts on their own would not necessarily be covered under this program and would be kind of a different scenario. And if that's something council would like staff to look at, we can certainly address that through further iterations of the policy.
So I would like that looked at, because I know myself, I clean up, right along our area and along our road, and every little bit helps as far as cleaning up litter goes. So yeah, I would like that looked at, definitely.
Anything further at this time? Okay. Given that there is an outstanding question and potential change to the program or an element of the program with respect to the situation just identified by Councillor Amero, is still interest of the council to move forward and approve the operational policy at this time? The suggested motion is that the council of the Region of Queens Municipality approve operational policy 100 on litter collection. Is there somebody like to move that motion or hold off? Councillor Wenzel?
There's also option 3.
Yep, well, if there's a motion, yep.
Consider additional information returned with revised draft policy.
Okay, your microphone wasn't on, so.
I'd like to move council direct staff to consider additional information and return with a revised draft policy.
And that additional information, just for the clarity of your motion with respect to that item just identified by Councillor Amero. Correct. Okay, is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councillor Fancy. Further debate or discussion? Can I get clarity? Do we have a program in place right now, or do we need to adopt this policy to have a program in place?
So right now we have no program in place for how the the funds would be dispersed to members of the community or anything of that nature, no.
Okay. Go ahead.
Apologize, I just had to step out of the room, but I'm just wondering what was the reasoning to change the draft? I apologize, I missed that.
So it was Councillor Merritt identified a circumstance in which a community member isn't participating in the program, hasn't attempted to actually participate in the litter collection program, but has voluntarily collected waste from ditches or within their community, and then looking for clarity on what the approach to disposing of those collected materials would be. What color of bag. So if they actually are participating in the litter collection program, they're provided a unique bag that's sort of that we and our curbside and then also that there's designated drop-off places. If people are collecting garbage outside of and not participating in the litter collection program, what would be the approach? And so Councillor Merrill, if I'm paraphrasing, would like to see some provision included within the program to provide for clarity about folks doing community litter cleanup that aren't participating directly in the program, per se? Yeah, go ahead.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, that could potentially open it up. But why would we have people, like, I guess, how would we encourage community groups to apply to this if there's provision that you don't have to and you can still have it picked up? Am I misunderstanding?
So I guess this is not really concerning community groups, it's just concerning residents. Like, not actually in a group, but just specific, like, household, like residents that want to pick up along their road, or like if they want to pick up, like myself, I pick up from my house to the Ben's place, and usually you get a bag or two, and I do that every spring, just because I can't stand to look at the mess that's along the road. So at the time, I was just putting roadside cleanup. I was told to put roadside cleanup on my bag and just stick it out with my regular garbage, and it would be picked up. So I'm just wondering what the approach is now, moving forward on that. And I don't know, Mr. Mayor, possibly we could pass this policy and then make an amendment to it when we find out some specifics on that.
Yeah, I will highlight that the way that the policy now reads is that groups don't need to provide proof of organizational existence. So even a group of just neighbors or an individual party looking, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Grant, but could participate in this program, that they don't actually have to be a registered community group, that we've sort of removed that governance or organizational sort of that barrier per se. So pretty much anybody could participate in the program and take advantage of the program, and maybe it is of interest to the municipality and to this council that we just enable people to participate in the program, but it's the will of council here with respect to where we want to go with this one. Councilor Fancy?
It's probably covered here, but I'm not seeing it as things like I've been involved with things going out to the beach and do a beach cleanup, and we get a bunch of garbage bags. Now, a lot of times you end up gathering it up and taking it out to the landfill yourself, or like I know out to White Point, they get a group together and do the White Point Road, and I don't know if they're actually looking for remuneration or anything for what they're doing, but what do they do with the garbage? Do they have to get rid of that, or proper bags and things? So I just wanted to look at those type of things when if we're going to make some changes.
Just a question for Director Grant. It was my understanding that this would enable more areas to be cleaned up through Queens County. Could you just comment on that based off of Councillor Fancy's previous comment?
I'm not sure if I totally understand. So the program has essentially stayed alike with focusing on roadside cleanup versus cleanups in other areas. I know that was discussed in previous with council, and the direction back to staff was to stick to the Adopt a Highway program. There are other programs available out there for beaches, I believe, which are an extension of the Adopt a Highway. I'd have to go back and get some more information and present to council, but.
Okay, so, the motion, on the floor presently is to, direct staff to go back for, and revise, the program. I would just flag, that we may not, given that it's springtime, we may not have a program ready to go in a timely way if we ask for further amendments. That would be one consequence of voting for this motion at this time. So I just flagged that. Any further debate or discussion, though, before I call the question? Councilor Fancy?
Not to start the process, but is this something we could vote through and be able to make revisions later?
Yep, I believe so, yeah. We could adopt certainly we have it, it is on, an option that we could do is to adopt the policy and then direct staff to make amendments to the policy. Certainly, it's something we could do.
So I'll withdraw the motion. And
Or
somebody-
if it's the will of the mover and the seconder, I'll also receive it as a friendly amendment, if you want to make a friendly amendment to the motion on the floor, or we can defeat it, or we can debate it, ask for the vote, and, yeah, okay, okay. Deputy Mayor is advised that withdrawing it might be the easiest from a process perspective, and that's certainly what Councillor Wenzel has said at this time, and so the motion is withdrawn. Is there another motion? Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I move that council adopt operational policy, oh, sorry, that's probably not bagging it. Yeah.
Yep.
Move that council for the Region of Queens Municipality approve operational policy 100, litter collection.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Fancy. Do we want to include in the motion some of the amendments or the direction to staff with respect to some of the amendments we're looking for? What?
Apologize. Maybe someone wants to add to that? I mean, I guess I'm just thinking of previous policies that we've put forward, like the water rebate, and then our staff are going to kind of monitor and do analysis and bring back revisions as they kind of thought. Because based off my understanding, and I did step out of the room for a moment there, but this has reduced barriers for residents to be able to clean up garbage and litter. So I'm not sure if, based off of why this was going to be sent back to staff, I feel like that kind of was flushed out, and that's not really a problem, but maybe I'm missing something. And so in my mind, if there's nothing else, then if our staff were to notice that there were things in this policy that weren't encouraging residents like we thought it would, then that would be helpful to understand at that time. But I'm also open to a friendly amendment. I just don't know what that is.
Yeah, and if I may, my understanding of perhaps of the friendly amendment to the motion would be to include to direct staff to consider an approach for disposal of litter collected outside of the program, something like that. Yeah, because the question, I know it's coming from, there's residents who are asking us directly, if I'm just going and voluntarily collecting litter from around the community, what do I do with the garbage afterwards? In terms of, is it curbside collection? And just so clarity with respect to that. So is that a friendly amendment you're willing to, okay, and the seconder? Who did second the motion, pardon me? Are you okay with that friendly amendment? Okay, are we okay with that? Any further debate or discussion at this time? All those in favor? Okay, I think we got there. The circuitous route to get, thank you, Director Grant. Madam Clerk, are you comfortable with that? Thank you. I'm going to, if it's okay with council, just call for a brief recess and reconvene at 11:40. Can we have a brief recess, please? right, if we could find our seats, please. Okay. So the next business item under bylaws and policy 5.2 is amendment to operational policy 27 on remuneration. Council, is there a motion? There's an amendment. There presently is an amendment, proposed amendment to the operational policy 27 on remuneration. Yes, yeah, go, sorry. Oh, right, there's a report. That's right, I even have it in my notes. Yeah, take it away, CAO Thorpe. Pardon me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as part of updating remuneration levels for members of council, operational policy 27 must also be updated. So a draft policy, updated policy is included in your agenda package, which was developed based on the recommendations of the Citizens Advisory Committee on Council Remuneration. The proposed policy would repeal and replace the existing policy of the same name and number, establishing updated remuneration rates for the mayor, deputy mayor, and councillors, and would be effective April 1st, 2026.
Thank you, CAO Thorpe. And council, you can see contained in the staff report there are a number of options to approve the policy as presented. We have the option to amend the policy, of course. We can defer this approval, or we can retain the existing policy. So what is the will of council at this time? Is there a motion? Deputy Mayor Charlton?
Sorry, one sec. I move that the Council of Region of Queens Municipality approve the amendments to Administrative Policy 27, remuneration of mayor and councillors, and adopt the amended policy effective April 1st, 2026.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Merrill. Deputy Mayor, as the mover of the motion, would you like to speak to it first? Pardon? Okay. Debate. As the seconder, would you like to speak to it, Councillor Merrill? Who would like to speak to this motion at this time? I think it's appropriate that we have a fulsome discussion about this item. This is an item that has been discussed considerably in the community, of which we've received significant amount of correspondence. And, you know, in my correspondence, I've highlighted that this is a challenging job, a difficult job that we do as members of this council, and part of the difficult job is contributing candidly to these debates and discussions in council chambers, and so we need to have a fulsome discussion, I believe, about the operational policy 27 pertaining to remuneration of mayor and council at this time. Okay.
Just giving others opportunity. So I put this motion forward, and I'm supporting this motion from previous comments that I've made before. I looked online at the West Hants budget for 26-27 and noticed that in 25-26 their numbers were different than what was used in the report that came forward, which would have been the A-man salary, and so that's done every 4 years, I do believe. And it's my understanding in speaking with West Hants that these numbers grew for the 25-26 budget and the 26-27 budget because of CPI. So they don't have a fixed CPI. We have fixed CPI of 2.5%. Theirs varies. And so for example, the budgeted amount for the mayor in 25-26, so the fiscal that's ending today, was 73,815, and for 26-27, with the 2.9% CPI that they have, it was going up to 75. And so I know that that item came up a lot, and in speaking with residents about why are the numbers different for Region of Queens versus West Hants, they're actually not. So for 25, 26, their counselors were making just shy of 42, and it's my understanding for 26, 27, they'd be 43. One other thing that I wanted to note that it's came up about West Hants not being a fair comparable, I don't believe that to be true. West Hants is a regional municipality. They have a rural and a town, just as the Region of Queens municipality has as well. And yes, they do have a population of 19,000 versus the municipality here around, I think it was 11.4 or something like that. But the West Hants Council has 12 members of council, and the Region of Queens has 8. And so the difference in their population is made up by more representation at the council table. The other thing that I would like to articulate is I think because of the way that our budget process came forward, and there were original conversations of a 21 cent proposed tax increase, of course everyone was grappling with that. There are affordability challenges in our community. People were afraid of that. And they don't hear 21 cents, they hear 21%. And so for anyone who looks at a property tax bill, they look at their tax bill, they times it by 21% and think, oh my gosh. And as that came down, I think that became more prevalent in the community. I heard 21%, I heard 16 or like 15%. We have Director Vino presented a budget earlier with a proposed 3-cent deficit. People will tie that to 3%, not 3 cents. And it's really hard to understand all this. I certainly wouldn't have understood a lot of this before I, became a counselor. So those are just things that I want to highlight because I think there's a misconception in the community that an increase in our operating budget is because of council compensation. And we have a $32 million operating budget, and a cent on the tax rate is $148,550. So if you do the math on that, I did it roughly, I think it was like 224 cents or something would be in that. And council compensation is like less than 2. So I just want to articulate that because I've heard so many comments about things, and the benefit part being one as well, but there was a $9,000 contribution being added to a $32 million operating budget. And so that's not, I know we've come a long way with our budget process, but this has never been the driving factor of any of those increases. And I think there's just been a misconception with that, so I just wanted to note that. With that, I'll let other members speak.
Okay, Deputy Mayor. Further debate or discussion? Councillor Jenkins.
As councillor for District 6, I am in this discussion about council remuneration. I've been very fortunate because I've had 100% support from the residents of the district that I'm involved with. And countless times they can't believe we get paid for what we do for the amount of time we're putting in. We are all available to our residents 7 days a week. And for me, sometimes it starts at 7 o'clock in the morning and ends at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. No matter where I go, people talk to me about the region. And I don't say that they can't talk to me. I'll stand there in a shopping line talking to people, or I'll go to their house if they want me to. It's a 20-hour-a-day job. And unfortunately, the remuneration has lagged behind what was over the years, and it's just correction time. And I am 100% in favor of it. And I'm also 100% in favor of it because I've had 2 people contact me that could not afford to run for council. And when I'm done, both of them want to run in District 6 because they can actually now give up a $17 an hour job that they have to drive 20 miles for and actually spend the time being part of their community, as all these councillors are part of their community. So I look forward to this change, and I look forward to the future when young people and older people can be part of this council and afford to be part of this council. Thank you.
Further debaters? Councillor Wentz, I'll recognize you now.
Yes, I wanted to add a little something to what Stu said. But first, I'm I'm a little disappointed that the full committee report on the remuneration and which sold me when I came to council that morning, I was a little unsure myself. I knew I was going to vote in favor for the mayor, so, because I still believe the mayor job is underpaid, but as far as council goes, I wasn't sure until I listened to former Mayor Clark and the reasoning behind the remuneration, which is not reflective here and which a lot of the public hasn't seen. So the outcry, like Maddie said, the outcry from the public is kind of justified if you think about the way they were thinking. Because a lot of people are ignorant to numbers, and I don't mean that to be mean, but you just are. I mean, you can mention that it's 1.058 cents on $100 of assessment, but they don't hear that, or they don't quite get that you can tell them there's $175,000 set aside in the reserve to handle this year because it wasn't done when it was supposed to be done. They don't hear that. So I'm disappointed that it's not here for. I think that's a communication issue, that we need the public to be more aware. I mean, you're not going to satisfy everybody. There's going to be people that's going to jump all over you, or you're going to have people that are envious. It's that green monster. Even if you argue back with them to say, well, you know what, it's less than 2 cents. So I am also in favor of this. And to go back to what Stu was stating and what former Mayor Clark was stating, was that we need to have younger people to get involved. How is a young woman paying childcare going to be able to afford to run for office? We're losing the opportunity to have young people involved. Do we want this council to be like my brother here, my brother across there, three gray-haired old men that are drawing a pension anyway? I mean, or do we want young people, progressive people that want to stay in this community? So I'm in favor of this amendment also.
Further debate or discussion? Councillor Fancy?
I hate to be the black sheep in the family, but I will be. When we look at policy 27 and revising this for the remuneration, I look at it from a different perspective, I guess, and understanding that I was not voted in to be vote along with the council. I was voted in because my community voted me in. So I have to go with what I feel that the community would want, and what the community and respect the wills of the community. I said, wouldn't we all want to raise? Somebody would give me that much money, for me to say that I don't want it, it would be ludicrous. I always would want more money. We all would want more money. But the optics it looks like it's, we go up 3 cents on our tax rate, and because we're going up 3 cents on our tax rate is because of the council remuneration. There's so many things that if you want to look at of the budget and everything that went through, even our, like our $2.1 million extra in our wages for all our personnel. You can't just take it. This is where I will defend in the sense of saying, you can't say, well, this is what's causing our tax rate to increase. You've got to take that out of the optics. That can't be part of it. It's got to be a matter of it's right or wrong to me, and that's what it comes down to. So when people come to me and say, well, look, if we wouldn't get the tax rate, it wasn't for this. No, there's 100 things. So you've got to bring all the things into play. Mine is that we have, I go around my community, and I go around North Queens where I live, and I can see what they make for a living and how they are suffering to make a living. Now, does that mean I should be suffering to make a living? No, but the thing is that I should be aware of them and be aware of what this would do. I can't, with all good conscience to be able to see. And it's not it's not a 40% or a 70% increase. Part of it is CPI, and then part of it is parity, trying to bring things up. So I could go with something lesser. I could go with something that had a CPI and parity over a number of years, that it doesn't put the burden on the people, and the people know that we are going forward. But to have the remuneration for the council in particular at this time, I just can't vote for that. Mayor Clark had a good history lesson on everything, but even when they voted on the council, it was a 3-2 vote. So they were split on what they thought. The mayor was no problem. It was all forward. So we all have to, I guess, live with our conscience when we go through these things. So I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to do what I think is right for the people.
Thank you, Councillor Fancy. Any other member of council like to contribute? Before I recognize the deputy mayor, would anybody else like to speak for the first time?
I already spoke once, so I can.
Yeah. Okay, Deputy Mayor Charlton, I'll recognize you now.
Thank you. One thing that I would like to go back to is when the chair of the committee gave a brief introduction about the Council Remuneration Committee. It was former Mayor Christopher Clark, and he had mentioned how March marked the 30 years of amalgamation for the municipality, where the town of Liverpool and the rurals combined. And so he had mentioned in his intro that 30 years ago, the mayor made $30,000 and that a councillor made $15,000. And I've done the math on that, where what the mayor makes today versus what council makes today, and it's gone up 1.6% a year. And so I also did the math because former Mayor Christopher Clark had said there was 11 members of council at that time. So I did the math, and council remuneration would have cost the municipality 30 years ago was somewhere in the 191. I've lost my page here. And what it currently costs is $215,000. So you think about that, and because it's decreased elected officials over the years. So again, I think the issue here is that it hasn't kept up with the cost of living or CPI. We've done that with our staff wages, but council has never ever been in that equation. And so I think that's been a genuine thing that residents have said, well, why can't you just do a little increase each year? It will never catch up, because if you look at West Hants, like I said, the comparables that they used were 68 for the mayor, and I think at that time 35 or something for members of council, but they're already their members of council are at 42 ending this fiscal today, and the mayor's at 73 today. And for the next fiscal, those are going up again with CPI. So we're still going to be a little bit behind. It would be obviously, it's significantly better than what it was. But I guess what I'm trying to articulate is, because it has only gone up that 1.6% in 30 years, this is why we're in the situation that we're in, and it's so far off of an actual comparable regional municipality. And with that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Roy, I'll recognize you now.
Excuse me. I've had people come to me and say, what, why? And other people pat me on the back and say, yes, you deserve it. Not just me, but our council and mayor as a whole. Do we do it in increments over time? I think if you do, at each time there's an increment, you're going to get the same thing, because that's just optics. So let's do it. Like I said before, rip the Band-Aid off, and next year we're not going to have to do this. We're not going to have to be debating this. We're not going to be, slayed in social media, and so that's my feelings.
Thank you, Councillor Roy. just a point of clarity, we're kind of going to do this next year, just because the policy, and I appreciate, and I want to highlight that the policy that we're looking at today implements a practice of the organization to review mayor and council remuneration, to review remuneration of mayor and councilors in the third year of each term of council, and so that the adjustments can be made, the analysis can occur, and the adjustments can be made for the upcoming, for the next term of council. And I am so glad to see that here, because frankly, to the conversation that members of council have made with respect to there being the need for such a significant correction, that wouldn't have been required if there was an administrative policy of this organization for a regular review of remuneration of mayors and councilors to occur regularly and to be updated for the next term of council. We wouldn't have found ourselves in a situation that has been very challenging and very uncomfortable to navigate. And so I wanted to highlight that element of this policy. And yeah, so and then with that, I will, I'll open it back up for further debate or discussion at this time. Councilor Merrill?
I just have a question for Director Vino. I'd just like to know how much cent-wise the actual increase is, not the whole council remuneration, but just the increase on it. Could you tell me that?
I think that was explained at a previous meeting, and it was like less than 0.01. I think we can find it.
So that's just for that's just for council. So that's not, so are you looking for the number with respect to council or mayor and council together?
I'm looking for both, the mayor and council together.
Yeah, so I'm not, what is the budget line items? We can do that. So the line item, if you look at the budgeted amount allocated for mayor and council compensation, and I did have a question too, as I don't see it in the policy. So there was a motion of council at our last meeting to include benefits for mayor and council as well at a 50-50 premium. 50% employer, 50% employee premium. That's not articulated within the policy. Is that a separate thing? This is the question.
I can't speak to the policy.
CAO Thorpe, is that, pardon me, can you speak to that? And then, yeah.
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, we would look to make that adjustment to the policy to include that.
Okay, and then the question, Director Vino, I believe you could probably help us to clarify maybe where is it in the budget document where the actual line item associated with the mayor and council compensation is?
The place where you'll find it standing out is in your staff report under
Okay.
mandatory costs.
Okay,
So while council remuneration isn't mandatory, it's significant, so it's in the line right underneath current staff increases. So the council new is $176,451, so $176,451. So that's roughly equates to 1.2 cents on the tax rate, and that does include the medical, and it includes it, I calculated it at a 50-50, not for all, because I know that there are some members of council, I made the assumption that they have medical. I know the deputy mayor articulated that she did. So there will be an adjustment to that once council decides what the split is, and B, I understand who exactly wants to sign up for the medical and who does not. But right now, it stands at about 1.2 cents. Is that your question, Councilor Romero?
so go ahead. Thank you very much, Director Vino, for clarifying that, and then I'll recognize Deputy Mayor Charlton at this time.
And I think just further to that, it was on one of our previous PowerPoints before about impacts to our residents. If we were going, I think at this time, the scenario that was used was like a 5-cent increase. How would it impact a property user? And I think on a $300,000 assessment, it was like estimated to increase the bill by $50 like annually. If I'm remembering it correctly, it was like 2 meetings ago. But just because I think to comments made previously, and Councillor Wenzel had said this, like, people just, they don't understand it, and my gosh, how could you? But they do, like, if we communicate in clear ways, which I think is what needs to happen moving forward, and I think we have done that some, and we've made improvements, but how does it impact a resident? Because when they hear 1 cent, that doesn't tell them anything. It tells us how we do this from an operating budget perspective, but it doesn't tell our residents, what does this cost? Is it $10? Is it $25? Like, that's what our residents, that's what they need to know. So I just wanted to highlight that.
And so for clarity, based on the assessment roll for this year, 1.2 cents, if your house is assessed, if the assessed value of your house that you're being taxed on is $100,000, that would be $12. $12 on your tax bill associated with the increase. If it's a $200,000 home, it's roughly $24 and therefore. But just highlighting what Councillor Fancy has said too, that the drivers of expenditures in the organization are complex and variable. Yeah. I appreciate the discussion, the fulsome discussion, and attending to this matter, I think, with the attention that it deserves. Is there further debate or discussion at this time? Anything further at this time? Okay. I will call the question then. All those in favor? Those against? Carried. 2 opposed. Okay. 5.3, amendment on operational policy 58 on alcohol use. Ms. Sarita.
Good morning, Council. This report speaks to how the municipality manages requests to serve alcohol at municipally owned properties for things like community events, festivals, and facility rentals. The current Policy 58 says that all alcohol-related requests must come to Council for approval, even when they are routine and meet all regulatory requirements. A motion was made in June of 2025 by Council directing staff to review Policy 58 and come back with recommendations to waive the requirement of needing Council's approval on such requests. As such, this report provides a rewrite of the policy to accommodate a key change, moving from a Council approval process to an administrative approval process. Instead of requests coming to Council, applications will be reviewed by staff and final approval authority given to the CAO. The rationale behind this proposed change is really about efficiency and clarity. These requests are operational in nature and already subject to strict provincial licensing, insurance, and safety requirements. The process to get these onto Council meeting agendas creates delays for event organizers, adds administrative burden without necessarily improving oversight, and is also using Council's time on matters that are operational. This policy revision allows staff to review applications more quickly while still ensuring all safety, insurance, and regulatory requirements are met, and with a further measure of staff ensuring the event is in compliance with what was requested. It is also important to note what is not changing in this policy. This does not mean alcohol is permitted everywhere without any oversight. Staff has tightened up the process for applicants in this revised policy, maintaining that there are still strict requirements to be met, including provincial liquor licensing, a minimum $2 million of liability insurance, safety and risk management plans to be presented, and responsible beverage service practices. The municipality still remains in full control. Applications can be denied, conditions, or revoked, or can be revoked if there are concerns. If an application is denied, applicants can bring this appeal to Council. So Council oversight would remain in place where needed. Another note of importance is that this revised policy model aligns with common practices across all Canadian municipalities, where Council sets the policy and staff handles the operational approval. Overall, this policy modernizes our process, improves efficiency, and maintains strong safeguards for public safety. Staff are recommending Council's adoption of this revised policy.
Thank you, Ms. Sarita. And any questions on the staff report, Council? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Just a comment, I thank you for this. I think this makes sense. Being here in the past term, there were a few situations where we weren't sure if, like an event that was going to happen would be able to have this in place just because of where the planning kind of fell in between council meetings and getting reports for council. And I think it's just that's a step that I think ultimately is not necessary when you put a policy in place like this and put all of those safeguards in place and leave it up to our staff. So that makes perfect sense to me. Thanks for the details.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion? The recommended motion is that the Council of Region of Queens Municipality adopt the amended Administrative Policy 58, consumption of alcohol on municipally owned properties as presented, and further that the Council of the Region of Queens Municipality delegate authority to the Chief Administrative Officer to approve or deny requests for the sale, service, provision, or consumption of alcohol on municipally owned or operated properties subject to the conditions and application requirements outlined in Policy 58. Moved by Councillor Wenzel. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Roy. For the debate or discussion? I'll ask the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Ms. Serrata. Okay, pardon me. Okay, so no correspondence for action, information, reports from in camera we've already dealt with. I didn't prepare a mayor's report for today. It wasn't on my radar. So we'll move to council business. 10.1 is dry hydrants. Councillor Fancy.
Okay, thank you. We recently had a fire chief meeting and a couple things that came up, and I see it's already out on Facebook, so people already understand it, that the fire, that especially in Liverpool here, they will no longer be filling wells for various reasons, and that's probably part of the contamination and the cost that's going to cost for the cost of water to be able to fill the well, and then no longer be filling swimming pools. That was used to be part of our policy. So those are two things that people should be aware in case they were looking for it this year. Dry hydrants.
Just point of information, on the agenda it says dry hydrants, but is this actually a fire service committee report update?
If you just wait 1 second, I'm going right into it now. I just put those couple things on there. Dry hydrants. We had on our books 4 dry hydrants that were needed, and 3 in Caledonia, 1 in Greenfield area. The problems have had before, they've been applications for dry hydrants. They paid for them themselves, the fire departments, and they never got put in. So of course they want nothing to do with trying to pay for new permits, to just see it go by the wayside. And I think there's been discussion of when we do these dry hydrants. I believe the timing is, as we looked at last summer, is now. We need the dry hydrants. In North Queens, they ran, all their dry hydrants ran out. They were doing a pump on back of a truck to get water out of the lake. So during the summer last year. Greenfield, they ran their dry hydrants, ran dry. So these are 2 areas in particular where the need is and where we need these new dry hydrants, and we've already approved that we need to go forward with this. So I think the first thing we need to do is for the region to make the applications for the permits. We do the permits, get them paid for, get this in place, and that I think the dry hydrants can only put in, if I'm correct, June 15th to October 15th. So it's got to be during the summer. If you talk to people right now, even the lakes, even though the water came up, is still low. If this is the way we're going to go, we're going to have another dry summer. We need to be there to help the fire departments. Last year we put out an RFP. We only had 1 application for it, and so we just never went anywhere. They were looking at trying to do it in October. It never happened. So I don't want to continue down that path. But one thing that we did talk with is down in Italy Cross. Last year, they put in a dry hydrant. And it was someone, a member of the fire department who did it and is qualified and trained. So we know there's people out there if we can get this out there. And when I was talking with others, I found out that, like this fellow in particular, never ever saw it. So it's just a matter of sometimes maybe getting it out there to be able to do it. And this fellow in particular said, if it was there, he said, I'd look at it. You know, so I think there's the opportunities there. I don't think to put it off to next year is an option. I think we need to be getting at it this year. We need to put it out as an RFP, and when I say that, there would be other qualifications that go along with it, but I would take that to my CAO that she could tell me what we could be able to do, because we don't want to be putting it out there saying just to do it, and they don't know what it would entail for the work.
So point of clarity to the CAO. So presently, where are we with respect to what is the present approach that staff are pursuing with respect to installation of those dry hydrants that Councillor Fancy just identified?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the current council motion that was passed in December was that council directs staff to undertake a public procurement process for the purchase and installation of priority dry hydrants, with installation to be completed prior to November 1, 2026. So just to reference the specific process, so public procurement process, meaning that it would go on the region's website as well as to the provincial procurement website. I would encourage any potential supplier who may be interested and able to complete that work to have a look at the website when that opportunity goes live. In those situations where we're talking about something specific to dry hydrants, that it's location specific, we would typically take one of two actions, or potentially both. Is that as part of the scope of work, we would include the coordinates of where those hydrants would be located. So in other circumstances, with some work, we may actually have a site visit on each site, depending on what the need is by the contractors. I would think that providing the latitude and longitudinal coordinates would be suitable in this instance, but the bottom line being that any prospective contractor would know specifically where those hydrants were to be located in that scope of work. So that would be the current approach that staff would take.
So Councillor Fancy, is that current approach, are you satisfied with that, or is there a motion that you would like to bring forward to alter that approach in any way?
The other thing which I didn't mention is that the three out in Caledonia are all in lakes. Because that's very important when you're starting to talk about a dry hydrant, because if a dry hydrant is going to go dry and it's just going to be dry with the rest of them, like one of them is behind the fire, by the fire hall, one is out in over in Westfield, and the other one is down by the nursing home. And I think the one out in Pond Hook is by the Narrows, I think that's what they said. So in other words, hopefully these ones will give us water year round. And hopefully the other thing which was brought up is the situation we have over in Hibernia, where using that one hydrant drains the person's well. We might be able to put that one as a service, something so in other words, it can help alleviate another problem. But yes, I am very, very pleased with the CAO's report.
Thank you. Is there anything further from the fire service, Councillor Fancy?
Did you want me to bring forth a motion?
I mean, if you're satisfied with the approach and level of service as currently articulated, from my understanding, I may be misunderstanding this, is that I believe staff are pursuing a direction that is compliant with or aligned to your expectation. That may not be the case. I'm not sure. That's my understanding, is that basically staff have got it. I think that, and so my understanding is that all those priority dry hydrants that you're talking about, that the expectation is that staff would have those installed by this summer, fall, that sequence. Yeah. And so certainly if there's a motion where you're hearing something where you want to alter that approach or that expectation, certainly we can debate it. But from what I'm hearing, it's just based on the conversation I just heard, I think they're in alignment. I think staff is in alignment to your expectations.
I think because they are motions we have put forward from council before for the hydrants.
Yeah.
So it's not a new motion to try to ask for more hydrants that we haven't already gotten. And so I would say then that we don't need a motion.
Go ahead, CEO Thorpe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as long as council's comfortable with the current level of service or scope of work that staff have proposed as part of the current motion that was passed by council in December, I don't see a need for an additional motion unless council would like to see a level of service change.
The only thing that I've heard from Councillor Fancy's remarks is an expectation around timeliness, and so making sure that we're getting the permits in place and whatnot, so that we don't end up in a position where we're not executing this work in a timely fashion. The other thing I heard was the depth so I'm not sure in terms of the specifications in the asks, that if they're going to be in lakes, they got to be way out in the lake and deep into the lake. Because what we saw last year with the drought conditions is several of our dry hydrants where they were in bodies of water like that the lakeshore receded so far that the pipe where it was drawing water was no longer submerged. And so just if there's an opportunity for our specifications with respect to the way that we're articulating that work to ensure that we're kind of the new dry hydrants are going to be less dry. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that's correct. So inherently in the scope of work, when staff go to a public procurement process, we would identify that. So it's reasonable for council to assume that staff will seek out a level of service that meets the need. So if it's a case of the circumstances, geography, or climate has evolved and we're in a situation where we need to conduct that work differently to ensure success, it's fair to think that that's inherent in how we do our process.
You satisfied with that, Councillor Fancy? I appreciate the commitment to acting on the dry hydrant file, because in my term as the mayor, I've heard loud and clear from all the impacted parties that we need to do better on this file. I appreciate council's commitment to funds through the CIP process around dry hydrants, and the attention that staff is taking to ensure that there is a priority. A priority. Fire suppression in rural areas is certainly a priority. Councillor Roy?
Hi there. I'm not sure if this is the time to ask this and present this, but our dry hydrants in District 1, they need to be looked at. There's one that's not functional at all. There's one that the trees have grown up through the fence. I don't know. Do they come out and check these? Like, when would that happen?
Yeah, so I know that has been discussed in terms of monitoring, maintenance, and reporting with respect to current state of dry hydrants. I will recognize Councillor Fancy as the chair of the Fire Services Committee to provide an update on that.
Yes, Councillor Roy, that's a continued problem because they haven't been repaired. There's been some that's been there for years that are in disrepair, but and that's the list we brought back to our CAO to look at. And again, that should be a priority going forward too, because it's one thing if you put it out there and nobody does it, then they get a little frustrated along with it. So. And I know that our CAO is on top of these things.
My understanding from attending a Fire Services Committee too is that we're implementing a bit of a different system to streamline the reporting of the current state of the existing dry hydrants. And so hopefully that will improve. And then we also, in having a Director of Protective Services, my understanding is that a lot of the kind of stuff falling through the cracks in the past as concerns were raised by fire departments were related to the fact that we didn't have dedicated staffing resources allocated to ensuring that the effective and coordination of needs and concerns of the fire departments as they emerged. We now have a dedicated resource and the Director of Protective Services. And I know that it's clear in discussions that I've had with the CAO that the expectations of council is clear that effective coordination and support of the fire departments will occur and is firmly in the middle of the desk of the Director of Protective Services. So I think it's reasonable to assume and expect that our approach to maintaining dry hydrants will improve greatly. Is that fair to say, CAO?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's absolutely correct.
Thank you. We good? We good on 10.1? Okay. I will turn it over to Councillor Marrow to provide an update on the Police Advisory Board at this time.
The Police Advisory Board met on February 19th. Representatives from the Provincial Department of Public Works met with the Advisory Board members and the region staff to respond to the board's request to extend no parking signage along the full length of Carter's Beach Road. The current signage prohibits parking on both sides of the road for approximately the first 300 meters from the beach. The provincial staff explained that further expansion of the signage would impact residents living along that road, and several properties have limited or no driveways. The province advised the remaining enforcement tool would be the installation of tow-away zone signage, and this is anticipated to be installed this spring. The role of the Police Advisory Board clarification was discussed stemming from a session that was recently held at White Point Beach Lodge for various municipalities. The board's responsibility is to provide the detachment commander with a list of reasonable and achievable objectives reflective of the committee's concerns. These priorities are incorporated into the RCMP annual performance plan, which serves as the operational blueprint for the upcoming fiscal year. The detachment commander then develops action plans to address those priorities and reports back quarterly on the progress and measurable outcomes. These were identified as the top priorities of the Police Advisory Board. Number 1 was drug enforcement. Number 2, traffic safety, speeding, and impaired driving. Number 3 was increased police visibility and community engagement. Number 4 was response to domestic violence. Number 5 was mental health-related issues. And number 6 was off-road enforcement. These priorities stem from Council's town hall sessions and the residents' communication with the Police Advisory Board members. The past practice was that the mayor and the CAO directly met with the RCMP to identify these priorities, but now the Police Advisory Board serves as a formal advisory board and a conduit between the community and the RCMP. In saying that, the ongoing issues at the skate park was discussed, and the Police Advisory Board members stressed the concerns from residents regarding the vandalism and the perceived unsafe conditions, particularly for young children. Staff Sergeant Fournette heard the Police Advisory Board but emphasized that enforcement efforts are best based on reported incidents and encourages the public to report their concerns to allow for data-driven deployment of the RCMP. Staff Sergeant Fournette also presented the RCMP quarterly report for the period of October through December. Queen's RCMP remains fully staffed at present with 1 constable anticipated to go off on paternity leave. Cause of service reports are higher than the same quarter as the previous year, and it was noted that mental health-related calls and well-being checks represent a significant demand on their resources. He also reviewed traffic enforcement statistics. Lastly, the request for additional GIS or general investigative services, and he stressed the need in this community, as we currently are the only municipality in Southwest Nova without one. As a result, the Police Advisory Board recommended that Council consider funding 2 additional GIS officer positions at a cost of approximately $225,000 per officer, and include this funding in the 2026-2027 budget deliberations, which we have done. The next meeting of the Police Advisory Board will be held on May 21st at 3 o'clock in the council chambers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Any questions? Any questions, Council, for Councillor Romero with respect to the Police Advisory Board? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to 10.3, wastewater betterment charges. Deputy Mayor, you want to speak to that?
Yes, please. So recently there were approved revisions to Bylaw 11, the public sewer systems, which do permit the future collection of wastewater betterment charges. There hasn't been any further information come forward to say what those would be. So at this time, in a moment, I'll be putting a motion forward so that we can have staff address that, because I think that's been something that's come up a lot, is that there have been comments of water and sewer going up Mount Pleasant at no cost to developers, which has never, ever been the case from the previous council. But recognizing that this is, with these revisions, this does permit that, which is common practice in other municipal units, from my understanding. And so at this time, I'm not comfortable with this part of that bylaw not being addressed in a timely manner. I think because it has always been the intent to collect those wastewater betterment charges, that we need to do that. So with that, I would move that council directs staff to research, draft, and report back on proposed revisions to Administrative Policy Number 59, Sewer Fees Policy, with the intent of setting out wastewater betterment charge fees and specifying when implementation of those fees will begin.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Merrill. Further debate or discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Approved. No new business. I will adjourn the meeting at 12:31. Thanks, everyone.